Thunder split the Wyoming sky. As Martha Palmer's gnarled fingers dug into slick bark, her knuckles blanched white against the murky waters that clawed at her body. The half-submerged cottonwood log, her only salvation in the churning flood, slipped beneath her grip as another wave crashed over her head. Freezing water filled her nose and mouth, yet more chilling was the laughter carrying across the torrent from the distant ridge. Keep moving. The old woman made her choice. Wagon Master Silas Reed's command carried through the din, sharp and final. Through the curtain of relentless rain, Martha glimpsed the last wagons disappearing over the hill crest, her companions of 3 months abandoning her to the mercy of the raging river. Some turned away in shame, others watched with cold indifference. None protested. "You'll not silence me that easily, Silas Reed." Martha gasped between violent coughs as water flooded her lungs. Her sodden dress pulled her downward like an anchor, the current threatening to tear her from the log entirely. At 65, she had never imagined her life would end this way. Murdered through calculated abandonment, her death disguised as an unfortunate accident. The wagon master's face had drained of color 2 nights ago when he'd spotted her shadow retreating from his tent flap. Martha had only sought medicine for her aching joints before the coming storm. Instead, she'd witnessed Silas Reed accepting payment from Jonas McCullough himself, the territory's most notorious outlaw, for a shipment of repeating rifles. Worse, she'd overheard their whispered plans for raids on settlements that would be blamed on innocent Cheyenne. "I'll see you all hanged for this," she'd foolishly promised when confronted a fatal mistake born of moral outrage rather than survival instinct. Now her righteous anger meant nothing as consciousness began slipping away. The irony wasn't lost on Martha that after burying her husband selling their Ohio homestead and embarking on this journey west at an age when most women settled into rocking chairs, she would die by such deliberate treachery. As darkness encroached on her vision, a movement on the nearby shore caught her fading attention. A figure moving with deliberate purpose along the treacherous bank. Swift Deer studied the raging waters with practiced precision, his tracking of the wagon train temporarily abandoned as the violent storm transformed placid crossings into deadly torrents. 3 days he'd shadowed their progress through Cheyenne lands, not in hostility, but vigilance. Too many settlers brought destruction in their wake, though experience had taught him that hatred of all white faces served no purpose. His keen eyes trained to detect the slightest movement across vast plains locked onto an impossible struggle amid the churning debris. Someone was alive out there, fighting against nature's fury with stubborn determination. Without hesitation, Swift Deer secured his scouting records in his waterproof pouch, high in a tree stripped his heavier garments, and plunged into the frigid current. The river fought him savagely, hurling debris against his body, as if consciously protecting its intended victim. Drawing on years of experience navigating mountain waters, he angled his approach using the current's own force to propel him toward the half-submerged log, where pale fingers still maintained their desperate grip. Reaching it, he found himself looking into the face of an elderly white woman, skin blue-tinged with cold, but eyes still burning with a fierce will to survive. "Hold to me," he commanded in English, securing his arm around her frail torso as her grip finally surrendered. Martha felt strong arms encircle her body as consciousness wavered. The world reduced to fragments of sensation, solid strength against her cheek, powerful kicks driving them toward shore, and most strangely, the absence of fear. Death had seemed certain moments before, yet now she surrendered to this unexpected salvation with what little strength remained. Swift Deer fought brutally against the current, protecting the fragile body in his grasp from the worst impacts of floating debris. When his feet finally found purchase on the muddy riverbank, he dragged them both from the water's grasp, collapsing momentarily before gathering the shivering woman into his arms. Without wasting precious time, he carried her toward a rocky overhang he'd noted during his scouting. Under partial shelter from the driving rain, Swift Deer worked quickly to build a fire, using dry kindling from his waterproof pouch and flint from around his neck. As warmth gradually penetrated the small space, He wrapped Martha in his dry buffalo robe, noting with concern the blue tinge of her lips and violent trembling. "They left me to die," Martha whispered through chattering teeth, each word a struggle. Silas knew I saw the weapons deal. Swift Deer's expression remained impassive, but his mind raced. What weapons? Who is Silas? Martha's eyes focused properly for the first time, taking in her savior's buckskin leggings, the bear claw necklace at his throat, the quiet intelligence in his dark eyes. Where she might once have felt fear, she now felt only gratitude, an urgent need to share her deadly knowledge. The wagon master Silas Reed, she managed. Selling repeating rifles to the McCullough gang. They plan raids on settlements, blame your people. I saw the map, heard them planning. Her voice strengthened despite her exhaustion. This was no accident, no kindness for an old woman too slow to keep up. This was murder disguised as mercy. Swift Deer's jaw tightened at the familiar pattern. White men's violence attributed to tribes justifying further bloodshed against his people. "Rest now," he said, placing a gentle hand on Martha's shoulder as her eyelids fluttered. "You are safe." As Martha drifted into uneasy sleep, Swift Deer stared into the flames. If her words were true, they faced dangers far beyond the receding floodwaters. The McCullough gang's brutality was legendary across 3 territories, their leader rumored to collect scalps for pleasure rather than bounty. And if the wagon master had intentionally abandoned Martha to die, discovery of her survival would bring swift, violent retribution. Dawn broke grudgingly, pale light, filtering through lingering storm clouds, as Martha awoke to find Swift Deer returning with freshly caught rabbits. The night's rest, though insufficient, had restored some color to her cheeks and clarity to her mind. "I don't even know your name," she said, her voice stronger than the previous evening. "Yet I owe you my life. I am called Swift Deer of the northern Cheyenne," he replied, turning the meat over the small fire. "And you need not speak of debt between us. No honorable person leaves another to die in such waters." Martha struggled to sit upright despite protesting muscles. "Martha Palmer. I was traveling to Oregon to live with my nephew after my husband passed." A bitter smile crossed her lips. "Seems I chose my companions poorly." Swift Deer handed her a portion of rabbit watching as she ate with the careful deliberation of someone accustomed to making meager portions last. "You spoke of guns last night. Repeating rifles sold to dangerous men." Martha's face hardened with resolve. "Silas has been wagon master on this route for 3 seasons, trusted to lead families safely west. But he's been using the journey as cover for weapons trading all along." She leaned forward, intensity burning in her eyes. 2 nights ago, I couldn't sleep, my bones ached before storms. I went to ask Silas for whiskey he keeps for medicinal purposes. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. That's when I saw them, Jonas McCullough himself, examining crates of rifles in Silas's tent. 15 rounds without reloading, they boasted. They spoke of raids they'd make look like Indian attacks, drawing the army in to clear more land. She paused. I tried to slip away, but Silas caught my shadow against the tent. Swift Deer's expression remained controlled, but his eyes betrayed cold fury. The McCulloughs raided a Cheyenne hunting party last moon. 6 dead, including a boy of 12 summers on his first hunt. They wore paint on their faces, but their boots and horses gave them away as white men. Martha reached across her weathered hand, resting on Swift Deer's forearm, a gesture that surprised them both. That's why I couldn't stay silent, even knowing the danger. My Henry, my husband, always said, courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing right, even when you're scared half to death. The unexpected touch and simple wisdom penetrated Swift Deer's careful reserve. Your husband spoke truth, Martha Palmer. He straightened, eyes suddenly alert. The wagon train moves toward Fort Laramie. The McCullough gang will follow, awaiting their weapons. When Silas tells them of you, They'll know I could ruin everything. Martha finished gravely. We must reach the fort before them warn the commander. Swift Deer shook his head. The army at Fort Laramie has little love for my people. My word would count nothing against a respected wagon master. His eyes met hers directly. And you, an old woman they'd think confused or hysterical. Martha sighed. We need proof. Swift Deer considered their options, his scouts mind-mapping terrain and distances. The wagon train follows the established trail around the Medicine Bow Mountains, longer but easier for wagons. There is another way through a pass used by my people. Difficult terrain, but 2 people could reach Fort Laramie before the wagons, on foot. Martha looked down at her swollen ankles. I fear I'd slow you terribly, Swift Deer. Then we shall seek horses, he replied, gathering their few belongings with efficient movements. 2 hours' walk from here lives a French trapper who trades fairly with all people. Baptiste Leclerc owes me a debt from last winter. Hope kindled in Martha's eyes. I have no money. Everything was in the wagon. Swift Deer's mouth curved in a rare smile. Gold is not the only currency of value on the frontier, Martha Palmer. Knowledge and skills hold their own worth. He offered his hand to help her rise. The day grows no younger, and we have far to travel. The journey to the trading post tested Martha's endurance each step, a negotiation with joints stiffened by age and her near drowning. Yet Swift Deer noted with growing respect that no complaint passed her lips, only determination evident in the set of her jaw, and the measured pace she maintained despite obvious pain. When they crested a small rise to see smoke curling from a sturdy log structure nestled against pine trees, Martha's relief quickly transformed to apprehension at the sight of horses tethered outside. Visitors. Swift Deer murmured, motioning for her to remain still while he studied the scene. Men from Green River Settlement by their horses, not McCullough's. He guided Martha toward a cluster of boulders. Wait here. I'll ensure it's safe. From her vantage point, Martha watched Swift Deer approach the trading post with silent grace. Minutes later, he signaled for her to join him. Inside the post, the scent of tobacco leather and dried herbs enveloped them as conversation halted abruptly. 3 pairs of eyes turned to assess the unusual pair, the Cheyenne warrior and the bedraggled elderly white woman. A heavy-set man with a magnificent beard recovered first his weathered face, breaking into a welcoming grin. Swift Deer, mon ami, it has been too long. He clasped forearms with Swift Deer before turning curious eyes toward Martha. And you bring a new friend, I see. This is Martha Palmer. Swift Deer replied. The storm has left her in difficult circumstances. Understanding dawned in the trader's eyes. Baptiste Leclerc had survived 30 years on the frontier by reading between lines. Madame Palmer, welcome. Please sit by the fire. The 2 settlers quickly finished their business and departed with polite nods. Once the door closed behind them, Baptiste's expression turned serious. To now my friends tell old Baptiste what brings a Cheyenne scout and a white grandmother to his door, looking like they've wrestled the river itself. Over strong coffee laced with honey, Swift Deer related their situation, careful with details. Martha watched with growing admiration as the young warrior navigated the conversation with diplomatic skill, neither revealing too much nor too little to secure the trader's help. When Swift Deer finished, Baptiste whistled low through his teeth. The McCulloughs et les sales enfoirés have caused trouble from here to Dakota Territory. He stroked his beard thoughtfully. And you need horses to reach Fort Laramie before the wagon train. 2 good horses for difficult terrain. Swift Deer confirmed. I can pay with... Baptiste held up a hand. Non, mon ami. The debt of my sight is not so easily balanced. The horses are yours. His gaze shifted to Martha, concern evident. But the journey you propose is brutal even for experienced riders. For Madame, Martha straightened her spine, fixing the traitor with a steady gaze that belied her frail appearance. "Mr. Leclerc, I buried my husband after 43 years of marriage, sold everything we owned, and set out across a continent at an age when most women are content to rock on their porches. I've survived illness, heartbreak, and now attempted murder." Her voice dropped to steel. "I will manage a difficult ride if it means preventing more bloodshed." Baptiste's booming laugh filled the trading post. "Pardieu, you remind me of my mother. God rest her formidable soul." He rummaged behind the counter, emerging with a small leather pouch. "Willow bark for pain and a salve for saddle soreness. You'll thank me by the second day, madame." As Martha and Swift Deer prepared to depart, Baptiste pressed a Winchester rifle into Swift Deer's hands with a solemn warning. "The McCulloughs don't leave witnesses, mon ami. Ride fast, sleep light." His eyes darted to Martha, then back. "And watch for Thomas Blake." Swift Deer frowned. "Who is this Blake?" "McCullough's new lieutenant, former Army scout. Clever and ruthless. Word is, he can track a ghost across bare rock." Baptiste's voice lowered. He was asking questions in Green River 2 days ago about a Cheyenne scout who's been watching wagon trains. Martha and Swift Deer exchanged concerned glances. Their situation was even more precarious than they'd realized. They weren't just fleeing. They were being hunted. They departed the trading post, mounted on sturdy mustangs, saddlebags filled with provisions. As they followed the narrow game trail, angling northeast toward the mountains, Martha reflected on the strange turns of fate. Days ago, she had been just another widow seeking a new beginning in Oregon. Now she rode alongside a Cheyenne warrior, carrying knowledge that could prevent massacre and war her life forfeit if they failed. Swift Deer set a pace, balancing speed with consideration for Martha's comfort, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. As afternoon sun began its descent, he guided them into a sheltered ravine where a small spring bubbled among rocks, a secure location for their first night's camp. "We've made good progress," he observed, helping Martha dismount and noting her wince of pain despite attempts to hide it. "The pass lies less than a day's ride ahead. Once through it, we follow the eastern slope to the river valley, then north to the fort." Martha eased onto a flat rock, discreetly massaging her thighs. "How long before we reach Fort Laramie?" 3 days if all goes well. The wagon train will take at least 5 with the mud slowing their passage." Swift Deer busied himself gathering firewood, allowing Martha dignity to work through her discomfort privately. As darkness settled, they shared a simple meal. Martha studied her companion across the flames, curiosity finally overcoming reserve. "May I ask you something, Swift Deer?" At his nod, she continued. "Most would say our peoples are enemies. Yet you risked your life to save mine and risk it again to help me warn the fort." Why, Swift Deer was silent so long that Martha thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a depth of conviction that transfixed her. "My father was a holy man who taught that all life connects in the great circle. My mother was known for wisdom and counsel. They raised me to judge actions, not appearance." He poked at the fire, sending sparks dancing upward. 4 winters ago, white raiders attacked our winter camp while warriors were hunting. My grandmother and 17 others, mostly children and elders, were killed. Martha's hand flew to her mouth in horror, but Swift Deer continued without visible emotion. "I returned to find her body. She had fought to protect the children until the end." From beneath his shirt, he withdrew a tarnished silver button worn on a leather thong. From an army uniform, though, the army denied involvement. Later, we learned it was mercenaries hired by land-hungry men wearing stolen uniforms to place blame elsewhere. His dark eyes met Martha's directly. "I could have chosen hatred. Many young men did. But hatred clouds, vision poisons spirit. So I chose to protect my people through knowledge rather than war." His voice softened. "And when I saw you in the river, I saw not an enemy but someone's grandmother fighting for life as mine had fought." Tears welled in Martha's eyes. "Thank you for sharing that with me. Your grandmother would be proud of the man you've become." Swift Deer looked away, uncomfortable with her emotion, yet touched nonetheless. "We should rest. Tomorrow's path grows steeper." As they settled on opposite sides of the fire, Martha, wrapped in the warm blanket Baptiste had insisted she take, a comfortable silence fell between them. No longer strangers, not quite friends, but allies, bound by purpose and growing mutual respect. The mountain pass proved every bit as challenging as Swift Deer had warned, a narrow, twisting trail that climbed relentlessly through rocky terrain. Martha's body protested each hour in the saddle, but she matched Swift Deer's stoicism with stubborn determination, focusing on their mission rather than her discomfort. By midday, they reached the summit. The vastness of Wyoming territory spread before them, rolling hills giving way to plains, the silver thread of the North Platte River winding northward. Fort Laramie sits near its banks, Swift Deer explained, pointing to the distant waterway. 2 days' ride from where it meets the Laramie River. Martha absorbed the enormous landscape. "It's beautiful and so vast. Makes a person feel very small. My people believe that is good medicine to remember our place in the greater world." The peaceful moment shattered as Swift Deer suddenly tensed, head turning sharply to scan the trail behind them. Martha felt fear clutch at her heart. "What is it?" "Riders," he replied tersely, already leading their horses behind a large outcropping, at least 3 moving fast. "The McCullochs," Martha whispered. Swift Deer's grim expression confirmed her fear. "They would have scouts ranging ahead watching for the wagon train. If they crossed our trail, he didn't need to finish. Martha's tracks would be instantly recognizable as those of a shod horse bearing weight. And 2 sets of tracks heading toward Fort Laramie would raise immediate suspicion. What do we do?" Swift Deer assessed their options with rapid calculation. "The eastern slope offers less cover, but faster travel. We must risk speed over concealment." He helped Martha remount, noting the tightness around her eyes. "Stay close. If we're seen, follow my lead without question." Martha nodded, gathering her reins with newly steady hands. "Lead on." They descended the eastern slope at a dangerous pace. Swift Deer selecting a route that balanced urgency with the limitations of Martha's riding ability. Twice they heard distant shouts from the ridgeline above, confirmation their pursuers had indeed found their trail. As the slope gentled toward foothills, Swift Deer led them into a dense stand of aspens, white trunks, creating a natural maze. "Dismount," he instructed. "We must separate to create confusion." Fear flashed across Martha's face. "What's your plan?" "I take both horses, create false trail leading north. You continue east on foot through this grove until you reach a stream half a mile ahead. Wade upstream for at least 100 yards, then make your way to that rock formation." He pointed to a jagged outcropping visible in the distance. "I will circle back and meet you after nightfall." Martha calculated the distance. "That's at least 3 miles on foot." "Can you make it?" Swift Deer asked directly, no condescension in his tone. Martha squared her shoulders. "I can and I will." Swift Deer squeezed her shoulder, a rare gesture of reassurance. "You are stronger than you know, Martha Palmer. Go quickly and quietly." As Martha made her way through the aspen grove, she reflected on the extraordinary circumstances that had her a respectable widow from Ohio, sneaking through Wyoming wilderness like a fugitive. The cool shade eventually gave way to open meadow, so the promised stream glinting ahead in afternoon sunlight. The cold water sent shocks of pain through her arthritic ankles as she waded upstream. But she pressed on, remembering Swift Deer's instruction to leave no trail. When she judged she had gone far enough, Martha carefully climbed the rocky bank, selecting her path to avoid soft earth that would show footprints. The distant rock formation seemed to mock her with its unchanging position despite her steady progress. Twice she was forced to hide as riders appeared on ridgelines, men whose silhouettes matched no army patrol, the distinctive slouch hats, marking them as the outlaws they sought to evade. By the time Martha reached the sheltered side of the rock formation, shadows had lengthened and her strength was nearly spent. Finding a small hollow protected from view, she sank to the ground, legs trembling with exhaustion. The sound of approaching footsteps snapped Martha awake. Her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a gasp as she realized darkness had fallen during her unintended sleep. She pressed herself against the rock face, holding her breath as the footsteps drew nearer. They're persistent, I'll give them that. The unfamiliar male voice, not Swift Deer's, froze her blood. Through a small gap between rocks, she glimpsed a tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. A second man joined him, both carrying rifles. Blake said the old woman's with a Cheyenne, the second man growled. Split tracks back there, too obvious. One went north straight as an arrow, too straight. You think they separated? The first man spat tobacco juice. Woman can't have gone far on foot. Circle around that ridge, I'll check these rocks. Martha's heart pounded so violently, she feared they might hear it. She had no weapon, no means of defense. If they found her, a faint whistle like a night bird's call carried on the breeze from the darkness beyond the rocks. The men instantly raised their rifles, turning toward the sound. What was that? The second man hissed, another whistle slightly farther away. The first man gestured silently. Both began moving cautiously toward the sound, away from Martha's hiding place. Minutes passed like hours as Martha remained frozen in place, straining to hear any sound of return. When a shadow suddenly detached itself from the darkness beside her, she nearly cried out before recognizing Swift Deer's silhouette. "Come," he whispered, barely audible, quickly and silently. He led her through darkness with unerring certainty, one hand firmly grasping hers, the other holding his knife ready. When they reached a small copse of trees, Swift Deer guided her to where their horses waited, expertly hobbled to prevent wandering. "The men," Martha began, "will follow false trails until dawn." Swift Deer finished quickly unhobbling the horses. "But others will come. We must ride through the night." "Who's Blake?" Martha asked as he helped her mount. The men mentioned someone named Blake. Swift Deer's expression darkened in the moonlight. "Thomas Blake Baptiste warned us. Former Army scout, now riding with McCullough. Very dangerous." He swung into his saddle. "He knows these lands almost as well as I do." The night ride became a surreal journey for Martha, exhaustion blurring the boundaries between wakefulness and dreams. Swift Deer remained vigilant, choosing their path with intimate knowledge, occasionally reaching across to steady Martha when she swayed dangerously. Dawn found them sheltering in a deep gully, where a small spring provided fresh water. As Swift Deer prepared a small smokeless fire to heat coffee, Martha massaged her swollen hands. "Even if we reach Fort Laramie before the wagon train," she mused aloud, "it's still our word against Silas Reed's. He's known to them a trusted wagon master. We have no physical proof." Swift Deer added water to a small pot expression, thoughtful. "Among my people, truth-telling is sacred. A person's word carries the weight of their honor. It used to be that way for my people, too." Martha sighed. "But out here, with so many seeking fortune or fleeing their past, words come cheap, especially those of an old woman and a—" She trailed off, embarrassed. "A savage, Swift Deer, supplied without rancor." "That is what many will think, yes. We must find another advantage." He was quiet momentarily before continuing. "The wagon train will stop at Horse Creek Trading Outpost before the final approach to Fort Laramie. It is custom for wagon masters to report trail conditions and Indian sightings to the Army detachment there." Martha straightened. "So Silas will check in with soldiers before reaching the fort itself?" Swift Deer nodded. "We can reach Horse Creek by nightfall if we push hard. There we might find allies or witnesses to prevent Silas from silencing you once he discovers you survived." With renewed purpose, they broke camp after brief rest, the final leg taking them across increasingly settled terrain. The sun was sinking when they crested a gentle rise to see smoke from cook fires rising above a collection of log buildings nestled along Horse Creek. Swift deer drew rein, studying the scene with careful attention. 6 soldiers visible on patrol. The trading post appears busy. Wagons outside suggest travelers already camped. Martha squinted against failing light. Any sign of our wagon train? Not yet, but likely tomorrow based on their usual pace. Swift deer turned to Martha, expression serious. We must approach carefully. I cannot enter openly. A lone Cheyenne warrior would be met with suspicion, at best violence at worst. You must go alone while I watch from those trees. Martha's heart raced at facing the next step without him, but she understood the logic. Who should I speak to? The soldiers? First, learn what you can without revealing your purpose. The trading post owner, Jacob Fulton, is known to be fair-minded. Start with him. Assess whether he might be an ally before approaching the army sergeant. Swift deer reached into his pouch and withdrew a small carved wooden fox. Show him this if you believe him trustworthy. He knows me. Martha accepted the token, closing her fingers around it. And if Silas or the McCulloughs are already there, then withdraw immediately and return to the trees. We will find another way. His dark eyes held hers steadily. Trust your instincts, Martha Palmer. They have kept you alive thus far. The trading post bustled with activity. Despite the late hour, travelers gathered around outdoor fires, while soldiers maintained a watchful but relaxed presence. Martha drew curious glances as she rode in alone, but no overt hostility. She dismounted stiffly near the hitching post, her legs nearly buckling after so many hours in the saddle. Need a hand there, ma'am? A young soldier appeared at her elbow, offering support. Martha accepted gratefully. Thank you, son. These old bones aren't what they used to be. The soldier smiled, revealing boyish dimples beneath his regulation mustache. Happy to help? You traveling alone? Martha had prepared for this question. My wagon train is a day behind. I rode ahead with my guide to arrange supplies. The guide has gone to check beaver traps, quite the entrepreneur as well as pathfinder. The soldier seemed satisfied. You'd be with the Reed train then. We had word they'd be coming through. Martha's breath caught at Silas's name, but she maintained a neutral expression. That's right. Silas Reed's group from Independence. Well, Mr. Fulton inside will get you sorted with supplies. The Army patrol's camped just beyond that rise if you need anything. With a polite tip of his hat, the soldier returned to his duties. Inside the trading post, the large room was illuminated by oil lamps hanging from rough-hewn rafters. Behind a long counter, a barrel-chested man with an impressive salt and pepper beard was concluding business with trappers. Martha waited until they departed before approaching. Evening, ma'am. The man greeted her shrewd eyes, taking in her trail-worn appearance. What can I help you with tonight? Are you Mr. Fulton? Martha asked, keeping her voice low. Jacob Fulton, yes, owner of this fine establishment. He offered a broad smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. And you are? Martha Palmer. I need to speak with you privately on a matter of some urgency. Something in her tone must have conveyed seriousness, for Fulton's smile faded. My office is through that door, Mrs. Palmer. He indicated a door behind the counter, calling to a young man sorting inventory. Timothy mined the store for a spell. Fulton's office was cluttered but organized, dominated by a desk covered in ledgers. He closed the door firmly behind them. Now then, what's this urgent matter? Martha studied him carefully, assessing whether to trust this stranger with information that could mean life or death. Something in his direct gaze decided her. Reaching into her pocket, she withdrew Swift Deer's carved wooden fox, placing it on the desk between them. Fulton's eyebrows rose in recognition. You know the Cheyenne scout, he stated rather than asked, voice lowered automatically. How did you come by this token? He gave it to me after saving my life. Martha replied simply. "Mr. Fulton, I'm in grave danger, and so are many others, both settlers and Cheyenne, if I don't get word to the fort commander immediately." Fulton leaned back, folding arms across his broad chest. "I'm listening." With concise clarity, Martha related the events of recent days: Silas Reed's secret meeting with the McCullough gang and the weapons trade, her discovery and subsequent abandonment, Swift Deer's rescue, and their race to warn the fort. As she spoke, Fulton's expression darkened from skepticism to grave concern. "The McCulloughs," he muttered when she finished. "Brutal bunch. Lost 2 good freight drivers to them last winter." He shook his head grimly. "And if they've got repeating rifles, then you believe me?" Martha asked, relief evident. "I believe you saw something," Fulton replied carefully. "And I've had my suspicions about Reed for some time. Man's too flush with cash for someone working wagon train fees. But convincing the army is another matter. Captain Hendricks at the fort has a complicated relationship with the tribes. Quick to believe the worst." Martha's heart sank. "Then what can we do if Silas reaches the fort first with his version of events?" "He won't," Fulton said with sudden decision. "Reed always stops here before proceeding to Laramie. Tradition, or more likely a final chance to conduct business away from the fort's scrutiny. That gives us time." He paced the small office. "We need evidence. Your word alone won't stand against Reed's, especially with the McCulloughs backing his story." "What kind of evidence?" Martha asked, hope rekindling. Fulton stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Reed's likely to have documentation, bills of sale, delivery schedules, maps of planned raid locations. The kind of things a careful businessman keeps even in illegal trade." "In his personal wagon," Martha confirmed. "He has a locked chest he guards closely." "Then that's what we need." Fulton's eyes gleamed with determination. "And I know just how to get it. Timothy," he called, opening the office door. The young man appeared instantly. "Sir, ride to the army camp. My compliments to Sergeant Davis, and I'd appreciate a word at his earliest convenience. Tell him it concerns the McCullough gang." As Timothy hurried away, Fulton turned back to Martha. "Sergeant Davis is a good man, by the book, but reasonable. If we can convince him to search Reed's wagon when the train arrives, Silas would never allow a search without cause." Martha objected. Fulton's smile held no humor. "That's where you come in. The supposedly abandoned woman whose survival would greatly surprise Mr. Reed. A confrontation forcing his hand in front of witnesses," Martha realized. "Precisely." Fulton nodded. "But first you need rest and proper food. There's a small room behind the store where my late wife used to sew. You're welcome to use it." He hesitated before adding, "And your Cheyenne friend, where is he now?" "Watching from the trees beyond the settlement." He feared his presence would complicate matters. Fulton reached for paper and pencil. "I'll write a note for him. There's a small cabin I use for storage about half a mile east. It's secluded, but close enough if we need him." Martha accepted the hastily scrawled map and note with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Fulton. I wasn't sure I'd find allies here." The trader's expression softened momentarily. "Mrs. Palmer, I've spent 20 years on this frontier. Seen good and bad among all peoples. What matters out here isn't the color of a person's skin, but the content of their character." As Martha gratefully accepted Fulton's hospitality, Swift Deer made his way to the abandoned cabin. The small structure offered perfect vantage of both the trail and trading post while providing secure shelter. As he settled in for vigilant waiting, he reflected on the strange path that had brought him to this alliance with an elderly white woman against members of her own people. Such complexity would have bewildered many, but to Swift Deer, raised in the nuanced spiritual traditions of the Cheyenne, it simply confirmed his father's teaching that the great circle of life connected all beings in ways often invisible until necessity revealed them. Dawn brought renewed activity to Horse Creek Trading Post. Martha had slept deeply despite anxiety, her body claiming desperately needed rest after days of unprecedented exertion. A soft knock preceded Jacob Fulton bearing a tray of hot food. "Sergeant Davis will join us shortly," he informed her. "I've explained enough to pique his interest without revealing everything. Best let him hear directly from you." Martha nodded, suddenly self-conscious about her disheveled appearance. Reading her thoughts, Fulton smiled. "My daughter left some clothes when she married. There's a dress that might suit and water heating if you'd like to freshen up." An hour later, wearing a simple but clean dress that hung loosely on her thin frame, Martha felt restored to some semblance of her proper self. The transformation bolstered her confidence for the coming confrontation. Sergeant Michael Davis proved to be solidly built, his weathered face bearing the impassive expression of a career soldier who had seen too much to be easily surprised. He listened to Martha's account without interruption, his only reaction an occasional tightening of his jaw or narrowing of his eyes. When she finished, he remained silent before speaking carefully. "You understand, Mrs. Palmer, these are serious allegations against a man who's been guiding trains through this territory for years without incident." "I do understand, Sergeant," Martha replied with equal composure. "I also understand that if I'm right, innocent people, both settlers and Cheyenne, will die in manufactured raids designed to trigger wider conflict." Her voice strengthened. "Would you have me keep silent knowing that?" Davis studied her with newfound respect. "No, ma'am, I would not." He turned to Fulton. "Reed's wagon train is expected today, by midday, if they maintain their usual pace after the storm." Fulton confirmed. The sergeant rose, decision made. "I'll position my men discreetly. When the train arrives, we'll observe but not approach immediately." His eyes fixed on Martha. "Your presence alone should provoke a telling reaction from Reed. If his response confirms your story, you'll have cause for a search." Fulton finished. Davis nodded curtly. "But I warn you, the McCulloughs have sympathizers, even among some of my men. Word travels fast." The implication was clear. They would have one chance to expose the conspiracy. By mid-morning, a scout reported the wagon train's approach. Martha's heart hammered as Fulton helped her to a seat on the trading post porch positioned for maximum visibility. Sergeant Davis and two trusted men took casual positions nearby, while other soldiers maintained normal patrol patterns. The wait was excruciating. Martha could make out Silas Reed riding at the lead on his distinctive black stallion, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. How would he react upon seeing her with shock anger or the smooth denial of a practiced deceiver? As the lead wagons began circling to form, the familiar protective corral activity around the trading post increased naturally. Jacob Fulton stepped from his store to welcome potential customers, everything appearing normal to casual observation. Yet Martha felt underlying tension vibrating like a plucked string. She sat very still, hands folded in her lap, as Silas Reed dismounted and handed his reins to an assistant before striding toward the trading post with confident bearing. He was halfway across the open area when he saw her. The transformation was instantaneous. His step faltered, color drained from his face, and his hand instinctively moved toward his pistol before he caught himself. Recovery came quickly, but not quickly enough to have gone unnoticed by the watching sergeant. "Mrs. Palmer." Reed managed, voice betraying only slight strain. "We thought you lost in the crossing. A miracle to see you alive." Martha met his gaze steadily. "Not a miracle, Mr. Reed. A rescue after you left me to drown." Activity had subtly quieted as people sensed tension in this unexpected reunion. Reed forced a concerned expression. "Left you, my dear woman. The current swept you away before we could reach you. We searched the banks for miles afterward." The lie came smoothly, but Martha saw calculation behind his eyes, assessing who might have helped her, what she might have told them, how best to neutralize the threat she posed. She chose her next words carefully, aware their audience now included curious members of the wagon train and Sergeant Davis's watchful men. Strange that your search party never found me when a passing Cheyenne scout spotted me from quite a distance. She paused deliberately. Of course, he wasn't distracted by thoughts of rifles being delivered to the McCullough gang. The effect was electric. Reed's face contorted with fury before he could master himself, and several onlookers gasped. Martha continued calmly, nor was he concerned about hiding maps of planned raids designed to look like Indian attacks, delusional ramblings of an old woman. Reed snarled, abandoning his solicitous facade. Clearly, the trauma has affected her mind. He turned to address the gathering crowd. Mrs. Palmer was always confused, talked to herself, wandered at night. We did everything possible during the crossing, but accidents happen. He spread his hands in false helplessness. Unfortunate that she's now fallen prey to savage manipulation. Sergeant Davis stepped forward, his uniform commanding instant attention. Serious allegations have been raised, Mr. Reed. As a matter of procedure, I'll need to inspect your personal effects before you proceed to Fort Laramie. Reed's hand dropped again to his pistol, then moved away, with deliberate slowness. On what grounds, Sergeant, the hallucinations of a senile woman saved by heathens? His voice hardened. My reputation with Fort Laramie's command is well established. One word from me about harassment of legitimate travelers and your career ends. Before Davis could respond, a new voice entered the confrontation, one that sent a chill through Martha. Problems, Reed. We've been waiting on those supplies you promised. 4 men had approached, unnoticed, their trail-worn appearance belied by the quality of their weapons and hard competence in their stance. Their leader, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, surveyed the scene with predatory assessment. Martha knew instantly she was looking at Jonas McCullough himself. Reed's complexion paled further. Just a misunderstanding, McCullough. Nothing that concerns our business. Too late, he realized his error, acknowledging a business relationship with a known outlaw in front of witnesses, including Army personnel. McCullough's cold eyes shifted to Martha, recognition dawning. This the woman you said was taken care of? He asked conversationally, hand moving to rest on his holstered revolver. The casual reference to her intended death galvanized Sergeant Davis. That's enough, he declared, signaling his men who moved to strategic positions. Mr. Reed, Mr. McCullough, you're both under temporary detention pending investigation. McCullough's laugh held no humor. Detention? I don't think so, Sergeant. With frightening speed, he drew his weapon. Before he could level it, a shot rang out from the direction of the store. McCullough staggered, revolver falling from suddenly nerveless fingers as blood bloomed across his shoulder. Jacob Fulton stood in the doorway, rifle still raised. Next one goes through your heart, McCullough, he stated flatly. The outlaw's companions froze as more soldiers converged, weapons drawn. Reed, seeing his schemes collapsing, made a desperate gamble. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Martha, pulling her against him as a shield while drawing his pistol. Back off, he shouted, pressing the barrel against Martha's temple. Everyone backs away, or she dies right here. Panic erupted as soldiers and civilians sought cover, leaving a strange island of stillness around Reed and his hostage. Martha felt oddly calm, despite cold metal pressed against her skin. After facing death in the flood and surviving days of grueling travel, fear had burned away, replaced by steady resolve. It's over, Silas, she whispered. You can't hide anymore. The truth is out. Reed's arm tightened painfully across her chest. Shut up, old woman. To the soldiers, he called, I want horses for me and my men and clear passage. Once we're safely away, we'll release her. You know we can't allow that. Sergeant Davis responded, rifle trained, steady, but unable to risk a shot with Martha in the line of fire. Suddenly, Timothy, the young store clerk, stepped forward from the crowd, hands raised in apparent surrender. Mr. Reed, sir, don't hurt her. Let me help you instead. All eyes turned to the young man in confusion. Reed hesitated, clearly uncertain about this unexpected development. I know a back trail. Timothy continued, taking another step closer. Army doesn't patrol it. I can guide you and your men out clean. Sergeant Davis's face darkened. Timothy, stand down. The young man ignored him, eyes locked on Reed. I've wanted out of this backwater for months. Take me with you, I'm worth more than this old woman. Martha stared in disbelief as Timothy moved closer, betrayal burning in her chest. Fulton had trusted this young man, they all had. Reed's grip loosened slightly as he considered the offer. How do I know this isn't a trick? Timothy reached slowly into his vest and withdrew a folded paper. Because I've been working for Mr. McCullough for some time now. This is the patrol schedule for the next 2 weeks, copied from Sergeant Davis's desk myself. Davis cursed, recognition dawning. The missing reports it was you. Timothy smiled coldly. 3 months I've been feeding information. Your men are so predictable, Sergeant. Always leaving important papers unattended for coffee. Martha felt sick. The betrayal ran deeper than she'd imagined. Timothy had likely already sent word to Thomas Blake about her and Swift Deer's arrival. Reed seemed to reach a decision. Come here then, boy, slowly. As Timothy approached, something flashed in his eyes, a look Martha couldn't quite interpret. When he stood just feet from Reed, the young man suddenly stumbled, falling awkwardly to his knees. Sorry. He gasped, hands splayed on the ground. Tripped on what happened next unfolded with blinding speed. From beneath the boardwalk where Timothy had fallen, a strong arm shot out, long knife flashing in the sunlight. The blade sliced across Reed's ankle tendons with surgical precision. As the wagon master howled in agony, his grip on Martha loosened. Timothy lunged forward, tackling her clear of danger as Reed collapsed. Swift Deer emerged from his hiding place beneath the boardwalk in one fluid motion, disarming the crippled Reed before anyone fully registered what had happened. The boy works for you. Martha gasped as Timothy helped her to safety. My sister's son. Swift Deer replied, eyes never leaving the wounded Reed, who writhed on the ground, clutching his slashed ankles. He has lived in both worlds since childhood. The revelation stunned Martha, and clearly the onlookers as well. Timothy straightened, dropping his subservient posture, his voice shifting to reveal educated precision. Thomas Swift Deer Davis. He introduced himself properly, nodding to the sergeant who stood slack-jawed. My father was stationed at Fort Laramie 15 years ago. My mother is Swift Deer's sister. His eyes hardened as he looked at the wounded Reed. I've been working at the trading post for 6 months, watching for exactly this kind of operation. Sergeant Davis recovered first barking orders to secure the wounded McCullough and his men, who had surrendered once the odds became clear. The patrol schedules, he demanded of Timothy. The young man smiled. Counterfeit. Convincing but useless, designed to trap anyone who acted on them. As soldiers dragged the cursing Reed away, Martha found herself trembling with delayed shock. Swift Deer steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. You knew, she said wonderingly. You planned this with Timothy before I even entered the trading post. Swift Deer nodded. We suspected a traitor inside the fort or trading post. Too many supply wagons had been raided with precision timing. When you brought news of Reed's involvement, the pieces aligned. We needed Reed to reveal himself completely, Timothy added. Your presence accomplished that perfectly, Mrs. Palmer. Martha looked between them, processing how thoroughly she had been integrated into a plan she hadn't fully understood. Yet rather than feeling used, she felt a surge of pride at having played her part well. You trusted me enough to include me without telling me, she said softly to Swift Deer. That's something, I suppose. His dark eyes held unexpected warmth. Trust was never in question, Martha Palmer. Only your safety. As the chaos subsided, Sergeant Davis approached his expression a complex mixture of professional satisfaction and personal discomfort. Mrs. Palmer. He began formally. Your courage today has prevented what would likely have been a bloody summer. I've sent riders to intercept and search Reed's wagon. If the evidence you mentioned is there, this case is solid." He paused before adding awkwardly, "And it seems I owe you an apology for underestimating your associates." He glanced at Swift Deer and Timothy with newfound respect. "The army has few enough friends among the tribes. Perhaps it's time we recognized our allies more clearly." The aftermath unfolded with surprising swiftness. Soldiers searching Reed's wagon discovered exactly what Martha had described. A locked chest containing detailed records of weapon sales maps, marking planned raid locations designed to implicate Cheyenne warriors and correspondence with Confederates at frontier settlements. Most damning was a letter from Thomas Blake McCullough's lieutenant outlining a coordinated attack on 3 settlements that would be timed to implicate Cheyenne raiders, while the actual weapons would be used against the tribe itself, effectively eliminating witnesses while inciting regional conflict. As the prisoners were secured for transport to Fort Laramie, Jacob Fulton insisted Martha rest in his private quarters, bringing hot tea laced with medicinal whiskey to calm her shaking hands. Swift Deer joined them, his presence now accepted with cautious respect by the soldiers. "You've done a remarkable thing today," Fulton observed, pouring whiskey for himself. "Saved lives on both sides of a conflict that never needed to happen." Martha shook her head modestly. "I simply couldn't stay silent. Without your witness, my people would have borne blame for attacks they did not commit." Swift Deer countered. "The strength was yours to speak truth against powerful men." Sergeant Davis entered, removing his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Palmer, the commanding officer at Fort Laramie requests your presence to give formal testimony once you're recovered. An escort will be provided." He paused before adding awkwardly, "He also extends gratitude to you, Swift Deer, though circumstances make it difficult to acknowledge your role officially." Swift Deer's expression remained impassive. "I require no acknowledgement from your chief. I acted for my people and for justice." After Davis departed, Fulton regarded Martha curiously. "What will you do now? You're welcome to stay here until you decide." Martha smiled tiredly. "I think my journey has a different purpose now." She looked to Swift Deer. "Your chief? Would he speak with me? There are things I've seen that might help build understanding between our peoples." Swift Deer studied her thoughtfully. "Black Kettle seeks peaceful coexistence. He would listen to your words." He hesitated before adding, "Our winter camp moves soon to safer hunting grounds. I must return to guide them." "Of course," Martha nodded, feeling an unexpected pang at their imminent separation. "You have responsibilities." Swift Deer surprised her. "There is place among us for those who speak truth regardless of origin. A French trader's widow chose to live with the Cheyenne after her husband's death. She teaches our children the white man's language, helping bridge understanding." His dark eyes met hers directly. "Should you wish it, I would speak for you with the council." The offer hung between them, profound in its implications, not Oregon and quiet life with her nephew's family, but a radical new beginning among people she had been taught to fear. "Outcome. I need time to consider such a generous offer," she finally managed. Swift Deer inclined his head. "Wisdom is rarely found in haste. I return to my people tomorrow. Until then, the choice remains open." That evening, seated alone on the trading post porch, watching sunset paint the western sky, Martha reflected on extraordinary turns her life had taken. The widow from Ohio, who had dutifully followed her husband's dreams, now faced choices entirely her own. What truly mattered in her remaining years, security and familiarity in Oregon, or using her experiences to help bridge the dangerous divide between peoples who saw each other as enemies. As twilight deepened, Swift Deer joined her, silently respecting her contemplation as they watched stars appear. "My husband Henry used to say that stars are the same everywhere," Martha mused. "That no matter how far you travel, you can look up and know you're under the same sky as those you've left behind." Swift Deer nodded. My people believe stars are campfires of those gone before us into the spirit world. They watch over our journey until we join them. Martha smiled at the beautiful image. Henry would have liked that thought. She turned to the warrior, whose courage and compassion had changed her life's course. I've made my decision. If your chief will have me, I would like to come with you, not to become Cheyenne. For I'm too old to truly change who I am, but to serve as a bridge where I can. To help prevent bloodshed through understanding, Swift Deer's normally stoic features softened. Age is no barrier to a strong heart, Martha Palmer. He reached beneath his shirt and removed the silver button on its leather thong, his grandmother's final token. This belonged to one woman of courage. It should pass to another. He placed it in Martha's palm, closing her fingers around it. My grandmother would have called you sister. The simple statement, carrying his highest compliment, brought tears to Martha's eyes. Then I will strive to be worthy of that honor. 3 days later, having given formal testimony at Fort Laramie that would eventually lead to dismantling several weapons trafficking operations throughout the territory, Martha Palmer rode beside Swift Deer toward the Cheyenne camp nestled in a sheltered valley. Timothy, or Swift Eagle, as his mother's people called him, rode with them for the first day, promising to continue their work from his position at the trading post. The frontier needs more bridges between worlds, not walls, he told Martha at their parting. You show us it's never too late to build them. Behind the unlikely traveling companions, sun rose over eastern plains, casting their shadows long before them. An elderly white woman and a Cheyenne warrior. Their combined shadow stretching toward a future neither could have imagined before fate. And a raging river intertwined their paths. As they approached the camp with smoke from morning fires rising like prayers into clear blue sky, Swift Deer turned to Martha with rare solemnity. Remember what the river taught us, Martha Palmer. Sometimes what appears to be an ending is merely a turn in the stream leading to waters we never expected to navigate. Martha nodded, understanding the profound wisdom in his words. Life, like the powerful current that had nearly claimed her, carried one forward regardless of plans or expectations. The true measure lay not in avoiding dangerous waters, but in how one navigated them when swept into their path. With straight shoulders and clear gaze, Martha Palmer rode toward her unexpected new beginning, carrying with her strength of the raging river that had nearly taken her life, but had instead given her purpose. In that purpose, building understanding between peoples separated by fear and mistrust, she had found the most meaningful current of all in which to channel her remaining years. The ripples of her journey would spread far beyond her own life, touching shores she would never see, but changing them nonetheless through the power of one woman who refused to be silenced by either nature's fury or man's cruelty. For some stories, like some rivers, never truly end. They simply join larger waters, becoming part of greater currents that flow endlessly toward horizons beyond imagining.